The coffee had gone cold 3 hours ago, but Lieutenant Colonel Ryuka Ghost Nakamura hadn't noticed. Her eyes traced the same weather pattern for the 15th time, pencil scratching notes in margins already black with calculations. The university library's fluorescent lights hummed overhead, casting harsh shadows across meteorology textbooks and aviation journals spread like a paper fortress around her corner table. Other students had abandoned the fourth floor hours ago, leaving her alone with the storm systems dancing across her laptop screen. She'd chosen this particular corner for its view of the airfield 6 miles away, where civilian Cessnas practiced touch-and-goes against the Nevada sunset. Sometimes, when the wind was right, she could hear the engines. It had been 4 years since she'd felt stick and rudder respond to her touch, 4 years since the Air Force had quietly shuffled her into academic exile after the incident over the Baltic Sea that nobody talked about anymore. The first sign something was wrong came from the sudden silence of crickets outside. Then footsteps, too measured, too synchronized for students. Nakamura's hand instinctively moved toward her hip, finding only empty space where her sidearm used to rest. Old habits died hard, even in civilian clothes. The door burst open with controlled violence. 6 figures in full tactical gear swept in, weapons at low ready, their movements liquid and practiced. Rangers by their gait and formation. The lead operator, face obscured by night vision goggles pushed up on his helmet, scanned the room before his eyes locked onto her. Lieutenant Colonel Nakamura. His voice carried the weight of orders that brooked no discussion. She closed her laptop slowly, deliberately, refusing to show surprise. "I'm retired, Sergeant, and this is a public library." "Not anymore, ma'am." He produced a sealed envelope from his vest, presidential seal visible even in the harsh library lighting. "By order of the National Command Authority, you're hereby recalled to active duty, effective immediately." Nakamura didn't reach for the envelope. "My wings were pulled, medical discharge, whatever you think." "We know about your eyes, ma'am. We know about the vertigo. We also know about the 17 bogies you tracked and engaged simultaneously over the Baltic before your instruments failed." The ranger's tone shifted slightly, something like respect creeping in. "And we know you landed that F-22 completely blind, guided only by your WSO's voice and muscle memory." The envelope remained between them, heavy with implication. Outside, she could hear helicopters now, multiple rotors beating the air in formation. This wasn't a request. "The situation?" she asked, finally taking the envelope. "Above my pay grade, ma'am, but they specifically asked for Ghost." He paused. The Ghost who could fly through a hurricane's eye and come out smiling. Nakamura stood slowly, gathering her books with practiced efficiency. 4 years of trying to forget who she was, undone in 30 seconds. As she followed the Rangers toward the door, she caught her reflection in the window, and for the first time in years, recognized the pilot staring back. The library's silence swallowed their footsteps as they descended the stairs. Nakamura's fingers traced the envelope's edges, feeling the weight of whatever impossible mission had dragged her back from academic purgatory. Through the window, she glimpsed 3 Black Hawks waiting on the university lawn, rotors still turning, crews watching the building's exits with trained vigilance. This wasn't just urgent. This was desperate. "Sergeant," she said as they reached the ground floor, "what happened to the rest of my squadron?" The ranger's hesitation lasted a heartbeat too long. "You're what's left, ma'am." The words hit harder than any physical blow. Phantom Squadron, the Air Force's most decorated unit, reduced to one grounded pilot with damaged eyes and a reputation for achieving the impossible. Whatever was happening, whatever had prompted this extraordinary recall, had to be catastrophic enough that they were willing to gamble on a ghost story. As they exited into the Nevada night, the lead Black Hawk's crew chief was already extending his hand to help her aboard. She ignored it, muscle memory guiding her up into the cabin with the fluid grace of someone who'd done this 1,000 times before. The Rangers followed, securing themselves with practiced efficiency as the aircraft prepared for immediate departure. "Where are we going?" she asked the crew chief, having to shout over the rotor noise. "Nellie's first, ma'am, then." He glanced at the sealed orders in her hand. "That's your call." She broke the seal as the Black Hawk lifted off, the university shrinking below them. The orders were brief, almost insultingly so given the dramatic extraction: a set of coordinates over the South China Sea, a timeline that was already impossible, and a single phrase that made her blood run cold: Asset Recovery Priority Omega. Omega meant nuclear. Omega meant somebody had lost control of something that could end civilization, and they'd pulled a half-blind pilot out of retirement to get it back. The crew chief was watching her face, reading her reaction. "Ma'am, your orders." Nakamura folded the paper precisely, tucking it into her jacket. The familiar weight of command settled onto her shoulders like an old flight suit. "Tell Nellies to prep my bird, whatever's flight ready with the longest range." "Ma'am, about your medical status." "Sergeant," she cut him off, her voice carrying the edge that had once commanded entire wings. "In about 6 hours, my medical status will be the least of anyone's concerns. Get me a plane." As the Black Hawks banked east toward Nellie's Air Force Base, Nakamura closed her eyes and let her other senses take over. The vibration of the rotors, the smell of aviation fuel, the subtle pressure changes as they climbed, all of it flooding back like muscle memory. She'd spent 4 years trying to forget how to fly, only to discover that flying had never forgotten her. The radio crackled with encrypted traffic, fighter escorts already being scrambled to meet them. Whatever this was, it was big enough to wake up the entire defense apparatus. And they'd chosen her, the pilot who'd lost everything, to save everyone. The Black Hawk banked hard, and through the window she could see Nellie sprawling beneath them, every runway lit, fighters already rolling toward takeoff positions. The entire base was mobilizing for something. For her. "Ghost," she whispered to herself, the call sign feeling foreign on her tongue after so long. It had been a joke once, the way she could appear and disappear in enemy airspace without detection. Now it felt more like a prophecy. They needed a ghost to fight something that shouldn't exist. The crew chief tapped her shoulder, pointing toward the flight line where ground crews were swarming around a single aircraft. Even from altitude, she recognized the distinctive profile: an F-35C, the Navy variant with extended range, already being fitted with external fuel tanks and what looked like a very non-standard equipment pod. "That's your ride, ma'am," the crew chief confirmed. "They've been working on it for the last 6 hours." 6 hours. They'd known they'd need her 6 hours before they'd pulled her from that library, which meant whatever was happening had been building for even longer. The kind of crisis that starts as a whisper in intelligence channels before exploding into desperate action. As the Black Hawk descended toward the tarmac, Nakamura could see faces turning upward, ground crews pausing in their work to watch her arrival. Some were old enough to remember her, to have heard the stories. Others just knew that someone important enough to scramble half the base was arriving. The helicopter touched down with barely a bump, and Nakamura was moving before the skids had fully settled. A full bird colonel was already jogging toward them, flight suit immaculate despite the obvious stress written across his features. "Colonel Nakamura," he said, saluting sharply. "Colonel Harrison, base commander, we've prepared." "I need a WSO," she interrupted. "Someone who knows the Pacific routes and isn't afraid of dying." Harrison's expression tightened. "Ma'am, the orders specified solo operation." "The orders can specify whatever they want. I fly with damaged optic nerves, Colonel. I need eyes I can trust." She met his gaze steadily. "Unless you want to explain to the Joint Chiefs why their Omega asset is scattered across the ocean floor because nobody wanted to bend protocol." The standoff lasted 3 seconds before Harrison nodded to an aide. "Fine, Lieutenant Commander Torres. Tell her she just volunteered. Torres, Nakamura recognized the name. Maria Torres, she's still flying. Best WSO in the Pacific Fleet, ma'am. Also the only one crazy enough to volunteer for a mission nobody will brief us on. Within minutes, a compact woman with steel-gray streaks in her black hair was jogging toward them, already in full flight gear. Torres snapped a salute that Nakamura returned, then broke into a grin. Ghost heard you were dead. Greatly exaggerated. You ready to do something stupid, Hurricane? Torres' grin widened. Ma'am, I've been ready since you pulled that miracle over Kiev. What's the target? Unknown hostile control of Omega-class assets, South China Sea, timeline critical. Nakamura turned toward the waiting F-35. We launch in 20 minutes. As they walked toward the aircraft, ground crews scrambling to complete final preparations, Torres fell into step beside her. Ghost, level with me. What aren't they telling us? Nakamura pulled out the orders, showing Torres the classification stamps. Someone lost a submarine, one of ours, nuclear-armed, and it's not responding to recall codes. The blood drained from Torres' face. The USS Leviathan. You've heard chatter. Disappeared 3 days ago during routine patrol. Navy's been going insane trying to find her quietly. Torres processed the implications rapidly. If someone's taken control of a Ohio class, that's 24 Trident missiles. Each with 12 warheads, Nakamura confirmed. 288 cities that could disappear in the next few hours if we don't find her first. They reached the F-35, its sleek form bristling with additional equipment. A crew chief approached with a tablet showing the modifications. Ma'am, we've installed the new deep-scan radar pod, but it's experimental. Might help with submarine detection, but the power draw. We'll limit our time on station, Nakamura finished. How long? 4 hours maximum, assuming you don't push the engines. 4 hours to find a submarine designed to be invisible, somewhere in millions of square miles of ocean, before whoever controlled it decided to end the world. The math was impossible, but then again, so had been landing blind in a thunderstorm over the Baltic. Nakamura began her pre-flight walk-around, fingers trailing along the aircraft's skin, feeling for anything out of place. Her damaged eyes could miss visual details, but her hands knew what an aircraft should feel like. Torres mirrored her on the opposite side, their movements synchronized from years of practice. Ghost, Torres said quietly, why you? No offense, but there are pilots with better eyes, better reflexes now. Nakamura paused at the F-35's nose, looking at her distorted reflection in the polished surface. Because I've done this before. Done what? Found the unfindable. In 2019, before the Baltic incident, I tracked a stealth drone swarm over the Arctic. 17 units, each the size of a sparrow, using quantum encryption. Everyone said it was impossible. She turned to Torres. I found them by not looking for them. That doesn't make sense. It will. Nakamura climbed the ladder to the cockpit, settling into the ejection seat with familiar ease. The instruments lit up as she began the startup sequence, and for a moment, the damage to her eyes made the displays swim. Then Torres was climbing in behind her, and her voice came through the intercom, steady and reassuring. I've got your eyes, Ghost, just like old times. The F-35's engine spooled up, its distinctive whine filling the hangar. Ground crews scattered to safe distances as Nakamura released the brakes and began taxiing toward the runway. Through the canopy, she could see other aircraft being prepared, tankers for mid-air refueling, escort fighters, surveillance planes. The entire apparatus of American air power mobilizing around one damaged pilot's impossible mission. Nelly's Tower, Ghost 1 requesting immediate departure, runway 27. Ghost 1, Nelly's Tower, you're cleared for immediate takeoff, all runways at your discretion. Godspeed, Colonel. As they lined up on the runway, Torres made one final check of their systems. Ghost, if this goes wrong. It won't. Nakamura pushed the throttle forward, feeling the F-35 surge beneath her. Because somewhere out there, 288 cities are depending on a half-blind pilot and a crazy WSO to save them. The F-35 rotated, leaving Nevada behind as they climbed toward the stars. The Pacific Ocean waited ahead, vast and dark, hiding a nuclear nightmare in its depths. But first, they had to get there. And with every passing second, whoever controlled the USS Leviathan was getting closer to whatever endgame they'd planned. As they reached cruising altitude, Nakamura felt the familiar calm settle over her. This was where she belonged, where her damaged eyes didn't matter, where instinct and experience trumped perfect vision. The Ghost was flying again, hunting for shadows in the dark. Torres, plot optimal search patterns based on the Leviathan's last known position and maximum submerged speed. Already on it, Torres' fingers flew across her displays. Ghost, there's something else. Intelligence flash just came through. The Leviathan's captain, Commander Rebecca Shaw. She was your student at the academy. The name hit like ice water. Shaw. Brilliant, ambitious, utterly devoted to duty. The kind of officer who'd die before betraying her country, which meant either she was dead or something far worse had happened. Change of plans, Nakamura said, banking the aircraft slightly. We're not hunting a submarine, we're hunting whatever's hunting her. 5 hours into the flight, somewhere over the endless Pacific, Nakamura's damaged eyes began to play tricks. The horizon wavered, instruments doubled and tripled before snapping back into focus. Torres caught it immediately through their shared displays. Ghost, you need to rest your eyes. I've got the scan. Negative. Nakamura blinked hard, forcing clarity through will alone. Tell me about the water. Surface temp 78 degrees, mild chop, visibility unlimited. Torres paused. Why? Because 60 miles ahead, there's a cold patch. 2 degrees cooler, maybe 3. Torres checked her instruments. I'm not seeing weight, barely visible on thermal. How did you? Submarine ventilation. Someone's running hot down there trying to cool their reactor. Nakamura banked toward the anomaly. And if they're running hot, they're moving fast, pursuing or fleeing. The F-35 descended to search altitude, its sophisticated sensors reaching down into the depths. For 20 minutes, they found nothing but empty ocean. Then Torres' sharp intake of breath cut through the intercom. Contact, not 1-2 submarines. 300 feet heading 270 at. Ghost, they're doing 40 knots. That's impossible for that depth. Not impossible, dangerous. The Leviathan's being chased. Nakamura armed the aircraft's anti-submarine weapons. Torres, can you identify the pursuer? Negative, it's Ghost, the signature's all wrong. It's like nothing in our database. Below them, invisible to the naked eye but clear on instruments, 2 shapes raced through the darkness. David and Goliath, except Goliath was running. The USS Leviathan, one of the most powerful weapons ever created, was fleeing from something that shouldn't exist. Ghost 1 to any station, priority flash. USS Leviathan located, grid reference follows. Submarine is being pursued by unknown hostile vessel, requesting immediate support. The response came back scrambled, barely audible through interference that shouldn't be possible with modern equipment. Ghost, breaking, hostile, jamming. They're blocking our comms. Torres' voice was tight. Ghost, if we can't call for help, then we handle it ourselves. Nakamura rolled the F-35 inverted, beginning an attack run that would make her instructors weep. Remember the Baltic? You mean when you went completely insane and it somehow worked? Exactly, Nakamura smiled grimly. Hold on to something. The F-35 dove toward the ocean like a falling star, accelerating past its recommended envelope. At the last possible second, Nakamura released 2 torpedoes. then pulled up so hard that both pilots grayed out momentarily. The weapons entered the water at a perfect angle, racing down toward the mysterious pursuer. For a moment nothing happened, then the ocean erupted. The unknown submarine breached completely, a sleek black form unlike anything in any Navy's inventory, before crashing back down and diving deep. The Leviathan used the distraction to surface, her hull scarred and battered. Ghost, the Leviathan's communication array is deployed. They're trying to. Tor's voice cut off as every instrument in the F-35 went dead. Complete electrical failure at 800 feet over the ocean. No engines, no controls, no ejection seats. They were a 30-ton brick falling toward the waves. This was how Ghost would finally die, not in battle, but from an impossible weapon that killed planes from beneath the sea. Nakamura's damaged eyes saw what perfect vision might have missed, a pattern in the electromagnetic pulse, a half-second gap. She reached for the manual restart, fingers finding switches by memory alone. Tor's manual restart sequence on my mark. Ghost, we don't have time. Now. Both pilots moved in perfect synchronization, hands flying across dark panels. For 3 seconds, nothing. Then the F-35 coughed back to life, engines catching just 50 feet above the waves. They climbed desperately, salt spray coating the canopy. Leviathan's diving again, Tor's reported, voice shaky. The hostiles pursuing. Ghost, what was that thing? Before Nakamura could answer, a new voice crackled through their restored communications. Weak but unmistakably familiar. Ghost One, this is Leviathan Actual. Colonel Nakamura, it's Shaw. Thank God you're here. Rebecca, what's your status? Critical reactor damage, half my crew dead or dying. That thing, it's not from any Navy. It's been hunting us for 3 days, wearing us down. Shaw's voice broke slightly. It wants the missiles, Ghost. It's trying to force us to surface in Chinese waters, make it look like we attacked first. Who's controlling it? We don't know, but Ghost, if we surface again, we're dead. And if we die down here, Shaw didn't need to finish. The Leviathan's automated systems would launch if the crew didn't provide living confirmation codes every 12 hours. A dead man's switch for the apocalypse. How long until the deadline? 6 hours. Nakamura checked their fuel. Just enough for 1 more engagement, maybe 2 if they were lucky. Rebecca, can you maintain depth for 30 more minutes? If that thing doesn't hit us again, maybe. It won't. Nakamura turned to Tor's. Hurricane, remember the Aurora project? The hypothetical space-launched kinetic weapon, that's a myth. No, it's in the pod they attached to us at Nellie's. Nakamura pulled up classified weapons displays. 1 shot, tungsten rod, satellite-guided, Mach 20 impact velocity. Tor's eyes widened. That'll vaporize everything in a half-mile radius, including the Leviathan if we miss. Then we don't miss. Nakamura began the targeting sequence. Rebecca, on my mark, emergency blow all ballast. Come up fast and loud. Ghost, if we surface. Trust me, I've got you. For 10 seconds, the ocean remained calm. Then the Leviathan burst from the depths like a breaching whale, water cascading off her hull. Immediately, the hostile submarine surfaced in pursuit, that impossible black form moving to ram the wounded American vessel. Target locked, Tor's announced. But Ghost, the margin for error. There is no margin. Nakamura triggered the launch. High above, an innocuous satellite received the signal and released its payload. The tungsten rod fell toward Earth, accelerating beyond comprehension. To the naked eye, it would look like a shooting star in reverse, a line of fire drawn from heaven to sea. Impact in 10 seconds, Tor's counted down. 5, 4, 3. The hostile submarine, sensing danger, began an emergency dive. Too late. The kinetic strike hit with the force of a tactical nuclear weapon without the radiation. The ocean simply ceased to exist for a moment, replaced by a column of superheated steam reaching toward the stratosphere. When the water rushed back in, the hostile submarine was gone, vaporized at the molecular level. The Leviathan rocked violently but stayed intact, protected by the precise angle of the strike. As the chaos settled, Shaw's voice came through, exhausted but alive. "Ghost, how did you know that would work?" "I didn't." Nakamura banked the F-35 toward home, fuel critically low. "But sometimes, Hurricane, the only way to fight the impossible is with the impossible." They flew in silence for several minutes, the Leviathan diving to safe depth below them, heading home under her own power. Finally, Torres spoke. "Ghost, that thing, it wasn't human technology, was it?" "No." Nakamura watched the sun setting ahead of them, painting the sky in shades of amber and gold. "But that's a conversation for people well above our pay grade." 3 hours later, they landed at Pearl Harbor, the F-35 running on fumes. As they taxied to a secure hangar, Nakamura could see the reception committee. Admirals, intelligence officials, people whose faces never appeared in newspapers. They'd want answers she didn't have, explanations for something that defied explanation. But first, she watched the Leviathan surface in Pearl's protected waters, wounded but whole, her crew alive to see another day. 288 cities would wake up tomorrow, never knowing how close they'd come to annihilation. "Ghost," Torres said as they shut down the engines. "They're going to classify this so deep we'll never be able to talk about it." "Good." Nakamura removed her helmet, her damaged eyes watering from the strain. "Some stories don't need to be told." As they climbed down from the aircraft, a familiar figure waited at the bottom of the ladder. Commander Rebecca Shaw, uniform torn and stained, eyes haunted but grateful. She saluted sharply, and Nakamura returned it. "Colonel, there aren't words." "There never are, Commander." Nakamura glanced back at the F-35, its skin still hot from their impossible flight. "That's why we fly." The debriefing lasted 18 hours. Every second of the flight analyzed, every decision questioned, every piece of sensor data scrutinized. The hostile submarine's origin remained a mystery, its technology so advanced that some suggested it couldn't be terrestrial. But Nakamura knew better. Someone somewhere had built that thing. And they'd build more. When they finally released her, dawn was breaking over Honolulu. Torres waited outside, 2 cups of coffee in hand. They stood in silence, watching planes take off and land, the ordinary rhythm of military aviation continuing as if the world hadn't almost ended. "They're giving you a medal," Torres said eventually. "Classified, of course. No one will ever know." "They'll know." Nakamura nodded toward a group of young pilots conducting pre-flight checks. "Maybe not the details, but they'll know someone was here, someone did the job." "Is that enough, after everything you've sacrificed?" Nakamura touched her temple, where the neural damage from years of high-G flying had slowly stolen her perfect vision. Every pilot paid a price eventually. The lucky ones got to choose what they paid it for. "Hurricane, do you know why they really called me back?" "Because you're the best." "No, because I'm expendable. A damaged pilot with nothing left to lose, perfect for a suicide mission." Nakamura smiled slightly. "But they forgot something important." "What's that?" "Ghosts are already dead. You can't kill them twice." A week later, Nakamura stood in the Oval Office, accepting a medal she could never wear from a president who could never acknowledge what she'd done. The citation read simply, "For service to the nation," but his eyes said more. In the corner, the chairman of the Joint Chiefs watched silently, already knowing this wouldn't be the last time they'd need Ghost. "Colonel," the president said quietly, "we're forming a new unit. Off the books, completely deniable. We need someone to lead it, someone who understands that the threats we face aren't always conventional. With respect, sir, my eyes are the least interesting thing about you." He held out a folder marked with classification stamps that didn't officially exist. "Think about it." On the flight back to Nevada, Nakamura read the proposal. Squadron 7, a unit that didn't exist to fight enemies that couldn't exist. They wanted her to recruit, train, and lead pilots willing to fly into the impossible and come back alive. More importantly, they wanted someone who wouldn't ask questions when the answers defied physics. She found Tors waiting at Nellie's, already knowing what the folder contained. So, are we saving the world again? We. You think I'm letting you have all the fun, Tors grinned. Besides, someone needs to be your eyes. Within a month, Squadron 7 had 6 pilots, each with their own story of achieving the impossible. Martinez, who'd flown a cargo plane through a Category 5 hurricane to evacuate an embassy. Chen, who'd landed a fighter on a highway after both engines failed. Williams, who'd shot down a target everyone insisted was a weather balloon but moved against the wind. They trained in aircraft that didn't have designations, flew missions that never happened, and faced things that challenged everything they thought they knew about physics, technology, and the nature of threats facing humanity. But always, they came home. Because Ghost had taught them the most important lesson. When you're already dead, when you've already lost everything, you become untouchable. Fear loses its power when you've already paid the ultimate price and kept flying anyway. 3 years passed. Squadron 7's record was perfect. 27 missions, 27 successes, 0 official acknowledgement. They'd faced drone swarms that moved like living organisms, aircraft that bent light around them, and things in the ocean that even Nakamura couldn't fully explain. Each time, they'd adapted, survived, and conquered. Then came the morning when Tors didn't show up for briefing. Nakamura found her in medical, doctors speaking in hushed tones about neural degradation, about the cumulative effect of G-forces on the human brain. The same condition that had taken Nakamura's eyes was taking Tors' reflexes, her ability to process multiple data streams simultaneously. "How long?" Tors asked, voice steady despite everything. 6 months, maybe less if you keep flying. They sat in silence for a long moment before Tors spoke again. "Ghost, promise me something." "Anything." "When I can't fly anymore, you'll find someone else. Someone young and stupid enough to think they're invincible." "Hurricane." "Promise me, the work's too important." Nakamura squeezed her friend's hand. "I promise." But Tors had 6 more months. They flew together one last time, a simple patrol over the Pacific. No hostile contacts, no impossible physics, just 2 pilots sharing the sky. As they turned for home, Tors spoke over the intercom. "Ghost, do you ever wonder if we're the last line of defense, or the first line of something bigger?" "What do you mean?" "These things we're fighting, they're getting more sophisticated, more frequent. Like someone's testing us, seeing how we adapt." Nakamura had wondered the same thing but kept her voice neutral. "Maybe. If something bigger's coming, the world's going to need more pilots like you." "Like us," Nakamura corrected. That night, Tors retired quietly. No ceremony, no fanfare. She took a teaching position at the academy, passing on lessons learned in flights that never happened. And Nakamura found herself alone in the cockpit for the first time in 3 years, her damaged eyes struggling without her partner's voice guiding her. The replacement WSO was competent, skilled, even gifted. But he wasn't Tors, didn't have that instinctive understanding of how Ghost flew, how she thought. On their 3rd mission together, hunting something that radar insisted didn't exist over the Arctic, Nakamura finally understood what Tors had meant about finding someone young and stupid. "Ma'am, that's impossible," Lieutenant Brooks said for the 5th time. "Lieutenant, in this squadron, we eat impossible for breakfast." She rolled the aircraft inverted, chasing a signature that existed only in the gaps between sensor sweeps. "Now stop telling me what can't be done and start figuring out how we're going to do it." They completed the mission, neutralizing something that looked like Aurora Borealis but moved with purpose and intelligence. But Nakamura knew the partnership wasn't sustainable. Brooks flew by the book in a squadron that had burned the book on day one. She found her answer in an unexpected place, a crash report from 6 months earlier. An Air National Guard pilot named Jessica Phoenix Riley had survived an unsurvivable situation, flying an F-16 with no hydraulics, half a wing, and a cockpit full of smoke to a successful landing. The official report called it luck. The cockpit recorder told a different story: 47 minutes of impossible decisions made correctly, of physics bent but not broken. Riley was flying cargo planes in Alaska when Nakamura found her. Self-exiled after the crash investigation suggested she'd been hallucinating from oxygen deprivation. She was younger than Tors had been, angrier, convinced the Air Force had thrown her away. "They said I imagined the lights," Riley said over beer in a dingy Anchorage bar. "The ones that guided me home when my instruments failed." "Did you?" "No, they were real as you sitting here." Riley met her eyes defiantly. "Which means either I'm crazy or the world's stranger than most people are ready to accept." Nakamura slid the recruitment folder across the table. "I'm offering you a chance to fly things that'll make those lights look mundane." Riley stared at the classification stamps. "This is real." "As real as those lights that saved you." Nakamura stood. "You've got 24 hours to decide. But Phoenix, understand something. If you say yes, you're volunteering to see things that'll challenge everything you believe about reality, and you'll never be able to tell anyone." "I already can't tell anyone," Riley said bitterly. "At least with you I'd be flying." 24 hours later, Riley stood in Squadron 7's hangar, staring at aircraft that shouldn't exist. "Colonel, what exactly are we fighting?" "The future," Nakamura replied. "Or maybe the past. Sometimes, honestly, I'm not sure there's a difference." The training was brutal. Riley had talent but lacked Tor's intuitive understanding of the impossible. She questioned too much, needed explanations that didn't exist. But she had something Tor's hadn't. She'd already seen behind the veil. The lights that had guided her home had prepared her for a world where physics was more suggestion than law. Their first mission together came 3 weeks later. Something was interfering with satellite communications over the Indian Ocean, something that appeared on no sensors but cast shadows satellites could see. As they approached the coordinates, Riley's voice came through the intercom, steady despite her nerves. "Ghost, I'm reading absolutely nothing, but there's definitely something there." "How do you know?" "Because the stars are wrong. There's a patch of sky where they're displaced, like looking through water." Nakamura smiled. The kid had the gift, seeing not what was there but what wasn't. "Phoenix, ever play hide and seek as a kid?" "Sure." "The best hiders don't hide. They make you look somewhere else." Nakamura armed weapons that officially didn't exist. "So stop looking at where it is and start looking at where it isn't." The engagement lasted 12 minutes. Whatever had been bending light around itself hadn't expected to face pilots who'd learned to see absence as clearly as presence. When it finally revealed itself, a craft of impossible angles that hurt to perceive directly, they were ready. "Ghost," Riley breathed as they watched the thing fold in on itself and disappear. "What are we really fighting?" "Questions without answers," Nakamura replied. "But that's above our pay grade, we just fly." As they returned to base, Nakamura caught her reflection in the canopy. Her hair was more gray than black now, lines carved deep by years of impossible stress. She'd been flying beyond the edge for so long, she'd forgotten what normal looked like. But watching Riley adapt, seeing her accept the impossible with the resilience of youth, Nakamura felt something she hadn't experienced in years: hope. Maybe Tors had been right. Maybe they weren't the last line of defense but the first of something new. Pilots trained not for the wars of today but for the conflicts of tomorrow, when the enemy might not be human, might not even be comprehensible. That night she called Tors. "How's teaching?" "Boring as hell," Tors laughed. How's the new kid? She'll do. Different from you, but she'll do. Ghost, there's something I never told you. That last mission we flew together, I saw something. What kind of something? The good kind. Whatever we're fighting, we're not fighting it alone. There are others out there, Ghost. Other squadrons, other countries, maybe other things, all pushing back against whatever's testing us.